12:20 a.m. Eastern Time, a combination of fighter jets and drones destroy an ISIS armored personnel carrier near Sinjar. 20 minutes later, U.S. aircraft strike 3 more targets and a follow-up strike destroying another. At 3 p.m. Eastern, the final target of the day was demolished, again near Sinjar.
ISIL forces have called for the systematic destruction of the entire Yazidi people, which would constitute genocide.
This morning, we are also learning more about the president's struggle with the decision to intervene in Iraq, a war he has been opposed to for more than a decade. Politico reporting the president met with his national security advisors 3 times in less than 24 hours this week, considering every option.
To the untrained eye, it may seem completely impossible that things could get any worse in Iraq. It may also seem to many that a presidential administration, armed with so many resources at its foreign policy fingertips, could get something so wrong and so often. But there lies a reality of Iraq at the moment, a country collapsing into itself, a government that may be more ineffective than anything advertised on As Seen on TV, and the Obama administration reeling in what would appear to be little more than mistake after egregious mistake. This and much more. Let's welcome back to MidPoint from LIGNET.com, former CIA analyst Lisa Ruth, with our dig into the intelligence community. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Let's start off right away with al-Maliki, the prime minister. He has not left.
Correct.
Midnight was his time to leave. He claims he is now going to sue the president. Question I asked earlier now comes to you. Who is in charge of this country?
I think he is the closest thing to being in charge, which isn't really saying much. You know, keep in mind, he's also still Minister of Defense. He's Minister of the Interior. He has some loyalty, people who are loyal to him. That said, he's not overly popular. So we're in this very fractious situation, which is not all that different than where we were. He does control the troops on the street, though, and in many places, as you know, that's the authority.
Are we looking at a full-blown civil war?
More so than we've already been.
More
honestly,
so, yes.
I do think we're looking at a situation that could continue to unravel and deteriorate. And the question is, Maliki's going to give a press conference later today, and we're going to know a whole lot after we hear that. If he comes out and insists that he is prime minister, which is what he's saying, his son-in-law came out and said, we are not going to accept this decision, then you're going to have a political crisis that's even deeper than what we've got. That does have ramifications in terms of the fighting. It has ramifications in terms of the troops in the green zone right now. And yes, I do. I think that we could have an even further deterioration, which who would have thought that was possible?
Does the United States, if Maliki does not leave, and he probably will not, just judging by what's happening right now, have any leverage, anything whatsoever at this point? Certainly there's airstrikes, but leverage against him because nothing has worked to this point.
I don't see it. I agree with you. And let me just extrapolate a situation which could happen. Okay, we know Iran supports Maliki. So what happens if Iran comes in and backs him? The United States continues to talk and use a lot of rhetoric and say, we really don't want you to cause trouble, we want you to back off. But at this point, what can we do? You then have Iran taking a greater role, the U.S. taking a less role. You've got the Kurds who are now trying to arm, who are out acting alone. Again, it's a situation that is not only confusing from the outside, but even within government. Who can make decisions? Who follows who?
Gary Bernson from the CIA, former CIA analyst, was with us earlier in the show, and I put it to him very bluntly, and he had a very blunt answer coming back with regard to ISIS and what to do at this point, and the United States. That the United States, although they have ground support, or air support rather now, we have air attacks, he said you've got to put at least 200 people on the ground, you've got to put specialists on the ground, and you have to kill them. You must be completely and totally dedicated to killing ISIS and not just taking them out. Did he get it right?
Nobody likes to use those words you just used, and I heard your earlier show, and you're right, people like to use euphemisms. You know, we need to neutralize them or eliminate. Exactly. The fact is, ISIS is a threat like we have never seen. And I agree, the part on the ground, right now what we're doing is defensive airstrikes. This is not going to work. At a minimum, we have to do offensive airstrikes. We also have to make a decision about Syria, just to make things even more confusing, because if we're not going to go into Syria and attack them there, ISIS can just fall back into Syria. This group is like something we've never seen. They hold territory. We've never seen terrorists do this. They are, genocide is, again, the nicest word you can use for what they're doing against minority groups. I think if we, as a world, and the United States is part of that, are not prepared to eliminate, neutralize, kill these people, then we basically have to say we cede the territory. And that's, that we cede the Middle East. And the implications for the United States are extreme if we choose to do that.
I'm going to play military strategist here for a moment. I will not get out my old Stratego board game and start to work on it here, but at least this is what a lot of people are asking right now. You mentioned Syria. Much of it comes from Syria. ISIS can simply fall back. If you were to create the perfect idea here, because again, it's all about endgame, Lisa, we never seem to get there, is that if America wants to do this, whether it's with, without help, whatever, you've got to go into Syria, you have to do a clean-out operation. You then have to go in with troops and airstrikes in northern Iraq in a clean-out operation. But you have to basically coordinate these, and there is no other. I have not talked to one military strategist or one intelligence strategist who has said anything but that's the only way to get this done.
You're right, and the problem is that's why it's not going to get done. Let's be honest here. The United States can't even arm rebels in Syria because we don't know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. We don't want to support Assad. If you go in and go against ISIS, which is the strongest group in Syria, are you helping Assad? Are we prepared to do this? The word conundrum is what I keep coming back to. We have waited so long to make decisions that it is probably too late, really. So then where are we left? I think airstrikes, I think offensive airstrikes. I think we've got to bomb convoys of weapons that are coming through. And I agree with what your other guest said earlier. I think Obama's going to couch it as specialists. He's not going to call it ground troops. We're going to have advisors. We're going to have specialists. We're going to have more intelligence. But, the fact is, we can't even know what's going on the ground very well because we don't have enough people there to tell us. That makes us blind in terms of making military decisions.
Is our government blind? And I guess have they been blind for a long time? Because it would seem that the intelligence people get it right. Everybody we've talked to, we knew this was coming. The administration says we did know it was coming. Yes, you did. It was all sitting right here in writing, and you knew this. Time and time and time again, we hear the same thing to where presidents and vice presidents and politicians don't get it. Is it time for them, frankly, and I'm going to be even more frank right here, just shut up and let these people tell you what to do because they're right 99% of the time?
The problem, I'm so glad I was in the intelligence community because I didn't have to run for office, and the problem is they're always playing that game. You've got the November elections sitting on your back shoulder here. The problem with, I think it was disingenuous of the president to say they were caught off guard. If you look back in intelligence briefings, in February, the head of the DIA said, we have a problem here. ISIS is a big problem. We need to do something. The head of the Kurds came in April and warned the administration that there was a plan for these guys to move on Mosul and then to move toward Baghdad. There was a lot of information. There was a lot of intelligence. And the one that kills me right now is this: American people don't want to go into Iraq. Polls show X. Well, that may be true, but much to your point, it's really not up to polls to make these decisions. We need leadership and we may need decisions. And I'm not saying we should or should not, but the reason not to go in because of an American poll is really not the way to run a country.
Might it not be better to spin this? If you're going to try to spin and sell this right now, we've heard a lot of reports, Peter King and others, who have said that ISIS is now more dangerous than Al-Qaeda. They are wealthier, they are better contained, they are better commanded at this point. If you were then to say to the American people, and again, we're going to go off and really be honest here for a minute. Remember something called 9/11? Yeah. We screwed that one up. We missed that. If we do this again, we're going to miss another one, and there's going to be thousands of more people that die. Is that what you want? And I really feel like all of a sudden I'm running for office and I'm not here, but these are people and Americans who maybe need to be told this, and somebody's got to be honest with them sooner or later.
I completely agree with you. And again, looking at this, the covert action way of approaching this, I think what we're going to start to see pretty quickly is more footage of like this, of more footage of the beheadings, more footage of just how much of a threat they are, with an effort to educate the American public. Because this is true. This is spinning, as you said, but it's also providing information. A lot of people who knew really the extent of what we're dealing with here would suddenly change their minds. And I think you're going to start to see more of a campaign to educate, more of a campaign to talk about how much ISIS is a problem, talk about the impact. For example, let me ask you, what happens if ISIS starts controlling 90% of the oil in the Middle East, 80%, 70%? You know, we don't want to talk about a war for economic reasons, but what does that do to us as a country, as a world, if all of a sudden we don't have access to oil? What happens when ISIS starts wiping out whole populations of people? If they blow up the dam, for example, and 500,000 people are killed.
15 minutes it would take Baghdad to be flooded.
You're looking at a situation that is almost beyond our comprehension. And I think that we are going to see more and more of this kind of information coming out to help explain why we're sending in advisors and special forces and airstrikes.
I only have a minute left. I have to, because we spent so much time on this, but I can't let you get away without Ukraine and Russia. There is a real fear that there is going to be military intervention, further military intervention from the Russians. Do you get that sense that Putin's sitting there?
I think every day that goes by that they don't go in, honestly, that I don't think Putin wants to go in. I think he'd really much rather sit on the outskirts and say he's going to go in. That said, I wouldn't be surprised if by the time I leave here, he's gone in. I think we're very much in a 50-50 situation right now.
But he is ready.
Absolutely ready. He would.
And that's just the whole point I think people are missing here. He's former KGB. He understands this. It's not as if it's all of a sudden going to be a 10-second decision. They're massing right now. He is preparing for that. Whether he goes is going to be the question.
In 2 seconds, the difference, he's also not really concerned about what polls show or anything else. He's going to make his decisions based on his interest and the interest of Russia and what he believes he needs to do.
And for Lisa, Ruth, Fred Flights, and everybody else at LIGNET.com, that's right, LIGNET.com. Find out exactly what's happening. That's in-depth analysis and forecasting on the situation in Iraq and around the world. Lisa, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show and to be really honest about it.
Great to be here.
Which is what we're good for. All right. Later on this hour, around the dial to spin what's being said in the city that gave us the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution with talker Chris Stigl. And after the break, author Roger Stone digs deeper into the life and times of Richard Nixon. It's coming up right here on MidPoint, where we question everything.